Alright, today we are going to do a different DIY other than in the shop. We actually need to fix the big element on our Frigidaire glass top range here. So I got me a replacement, and if you buy the OE replacement, they're like 300 bucks, but you can get kind of a aftermarket generic replacement for it for around $50 or $60 right now. But one of the big differences I noticed when I took it apart to see the part number on it was that the wiring is a little bit different. So we're going to have to be extra careful on identifying our wires and things for this one to make sure that we put it back and get the wiring the same, because the positions are not exactly the same. So we'll get set up here. Not a lot of tools needed. We just need a multimeter. We're going to check some things on the old one, some way to hold the top up, and some little wire numbers, and basically a screwdriver and a pair of pliers and a box. So we'll see how all that comes into play here in just a little bit. Alright, so the first step we got to do, which is the most important out of anything, is we got to unplug the range, because we don't want to be messing around with the electricity with it plugged in. So we got to get a hold of it and slide it out, which isn't too difficult. You can open up the door and try to grab it and pull it forward. And we got to get it to the point that we can get in behind it and unplug it. So, step one, most important, is to get it unplugged. And there we go. Now we don't have any electricity going to this thing. And we don't have to worry about getting electrocuted or something like that. Alright, so now all we got to do is figure out how to get the top off. Well, they make it pretty easy, because right down inside of here is just a couple screws that hold this whole top on. And we'll just take those out, and then we got to prop it up, and then we're going to be able to look at the elements on the inside. Alright, so most of these glass tops, it's going to have some screws right on the inside here, so we just got to find the screws that hold the top down. And they're usually right in there. And there's two. So now the whole top can raise up. As you can see, it's got some insulation in there, and then the elements are on the inside. So it's no big deal to get that far. Now what we got to do is figure out a way to hold this thing up so we can access it, because it doesn't have anything to hinge hold it up. So what I'm going to do is take a ratchet strap and hook it on right there, and just hook up to my cabinet. That way I can hold this up and I can access this element, which is my bad one right here. So let me get a ratchet strap on here, and I'll hook right up underneath this lip, and then we'll be able to hold it up. Alright, so with the ratchet strap holding it up, and I strapped it up a little bit higher so I could see things, and it's disconnected, so you got to make sure it's disconnected before you start messing around with any of these wires. Right here is the element that's bad. And you can see there's quite a few wires that go to it. Hopefully these are identified on the little ceramic blocks, because they're in a different position, like I was saying, to my aftermarket replacement here. But I'm going to tag them, and then when we take the element out, we'll set them side by side and we'll compare where each one goes. We'll also look at what went wrong on this one. So first step before you do anything is take some pictures. Now I'm going to take some pictures of the wires and make sure I know the orientation of each of those. And I'm going to tag them as well. Now for each one of these, I'm going to tag them, and I'm going to put a little tag right here. This is simply because if you look at the replacement one, if I'm looking at it underneath there, it looks very similar, but you can see that the connectors are different down here than they are here. The thermostat connection appears to be about the same. But we're going to check it all out before we go to wiring things up and burn out our new element. So, step one in the whole thing of getting these wires off is we're going to tag these. And so, I got my little wire numbers here, and so I'm just going to start with a wire number, and we're going to call it a 2. So we'll pick our first wire, which is that red one. And I'll take these little tags back off afterwards. So I'm going to tag it as a 2. And I may be overkilling things, but it's best to do it this way, and then you don't have to worry about messing it up. And then we're going to put a little tooth right on that. So now you got to pull this little guy off. Well, they're a little difficult to get off. You have to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Or you can take a pair of pliers and grab it. Since the ceramic is damaged anyway, something's broken inside here, I don't care too much about pulling hard. But you can take a pair of pliers and pull them off. And so then there's wire number 2, tag to 2. And so then we're just going to do the same. I'm going to tag that as wire 3. And there we go. So we got all of our wires tagged, and we got all of our places tagged. So now we're ready to take the element out, and we'll compare it to the other one to figure out where our wires go. But the one thing you got to note is on these bars right here, there's lots of little holes. And it's because these are universal bars that they put in these units. And so there's lots of little holes that you can put different elements in. We got to identify which hole we're going to use. And then also on the back of the pan, it tells us numbers. We're going to match those numbers up to put these little pins back in there. So you can't do anything right now because this bar is what's holding it in there. So we got to get this bar down a little bit in order to slide that element out. Then we'll be able to see what the element looks like. So let's get set up, and this is where the box comes in, is that we need something to hold this rail up a little bit, because it also connects to the other. And what we got to do is loosen it up enough to lower it down so we can get the element off of there. So we get us a box, something that's going to hold on that rail right there, and we'll keep it to the side. Then we just got to pull the rail off, push these clips up, and we'll take our element out. Alright, so I zoomed in just a little bit so you could see the wire numbers and the wire identification that I did right there. So what we want to do now that everything's disconnected, we're going to take that bar off so we can get our element out. So it's pretty simple. Just takes a screw right over here. Let's get our screwdriver, and we want to loosen that screw up that holds it on there. And you can see the whole thing slides down at that point. So if you look, there's multiple holes down through here, so you got to make sure you get the right hole to line it up to the surface. So maybe a good idea to mark this as well while you're doing it. Alright, so now the bar comes down, but we got our box in the way, and the box is going to prevent it from just totally falling down. So now you can see the element is loose because it's kind of springy. It pushes up against that surface up here. We got to get those clips loose in order to pull our element out. So what you got to do is pinch that little clip right on the end, and then you can raise it up out of that channel there. Very carefully. And there we go. So our box is holding up our rail, keeping that element secure, and we just pulled our element out. So now you can see that the little tabs, we're going to have to reuse these, but there's little numbers on the back side of this thing. They're going to match up to the little numbers over there. We'll put it in the same orientation in order to get this to come out in the right spot. So we got our element out. So now let's move over here to the new element and see if we can figure out which wire goes to which. Alright, so here's our two elements. This is the old bad one, and this is the new good one. And so we got them sitting side by side because we got to do a couple things. We got to identify which ones of these go to which ones of those in order to put the new one back in. We also have to swap these little tabs over to lock it in place. But while I got it laying here, I was going to show what went wrong with it. Well, nothing big major. As you can see, I got a multimeter and I got it set on resistance. And so if I look at the new one and I cross the common, which branches off two, you'll see it when you're looking at it. There's two wires that come in. If I do the common to one of the elements, because it's a dual element, you can see I get about 48 ohms of resistance. If I do the other element, I get about 45. And so both of those have resistance, which means the element's solid inside. If I switch over here and I do the very same thing, and I pick up the main, this is the one that connects them both, and I check one of them, you can see this one's dead. I don't get any resistance. And so something's happened to the coil. If I check the other one, I get about 39. So the resistance is lower, it's getting weaker because it's aged over time. So if we look down inside of here and we try to see what happened was this ceramic backer back here has started to break over time, and when it broke, you can see right there, it broke the wire. And so the little wire burned in half. Well, if it's not making any contact, then you're not going to get any current. And so we'll go over here. One side of it is going to read some resistance, see about 10 or so. The other side is dead because the wire got broke right there on the little heating element, and it's because there's cracks all in the ceramic right there. So that's what happened to it. That little wire just kind of went bad. Pretty typical. Everything else is working okay, so I think we're okay on our stove because we found the problem is just the element, not anything wrong with the stove controls. All right, so let's get set up here. We're going to flip them over and figure out which connector goes to which. It's pretty easy because they identify these things kind of as a standard. So we'll be able to re-tag them, put it back in there, and we'll be in good shape. We also got to swap those little tabs off. All right, so we got them flipped over. So this is the bad one. You can see it's still got the tabs on it. I got to take those off and put them over here. Well, they have little numbers, so you can see this one goes at 63. Well, that's 63 right there, so that's pretty close. I'll use that little hole for that one and the 27 hole for this one. So that's pretty simple. But the confusing part comes into these connections, because the connections, just because they're similar, they're not in the same spots. And so what we got over here, if you look, this one's got a little tab, this one's got a big tab, this one's got a little tab. That's on the thermostat block. This one's got two little tabs and a big tab. So they're in different orientations. So then it's like, oh man, what am I going to do now? Well, no big deal, because we have some standards that they use in making these things. And so we'll see, if you look, if I zoom right down in there, right beside each one of these little tabs right here is an identifier. So this one is actually marked, forget my little markers, this one's actually marked 2A, right on the little block. This one is marked 2B. This one is marked, can't hardly see it, 1B. And so, if we go over and look at our other ones, we see that for this one, it's a big one. And so it's a 2A. Over here, when I look, this one's got the designation 2A. So this big one is this big one right here. And then if I look right here, I see 2B. Over here, 2B, that's that little one. And then 1B is that little one right there. So they're in different orientations, and that's why it's important to make sure that you know which one to do. That's why I put the little stickers on there so I can see. Now for these two, these are the element ones. These are identified over here, but they're not identified over here. So I got to figure out which one of these runs the big element and which one runs the little element. But we'll do that in just a minute by flipping it over, and we're going to see what's going on. So let me go ahead and get my little stickers on here. I'm just going to repeat these numbers, and then I'll wire it back up. And so over here we got 2A, this one, and over here we got 2A. So this one is going to be sticker number 2. So now we take our little sticker, and we're going to put that right there temporarily. Like I say, we're going to take all these little stickers back off. So that's my 2. This one is 2B. This one over here is 2B. So that's the number 3 for that one, 2B. So now we got to flip it back over. But since we got it over here, I'm going to go ahead and take these off and move them over, and then we'll be done with that part. All right, so with our little guys put back on here, we're going to flip it over, and what I'm looking for is which one of these goes to the outside coil and which one goes to the inside coil. So let's flip it back over, and that's those connectors. And we flip our new one back over, and that's those connectors. So what I want to look at, because all of this I know, all I need to know is which ones of these are the little ones and the big ones. So what I want to do is look and see for this one, you can see it connects up to the outside coil. And you don't want to touch these. You want to keep them as clean as possible and not get fingerprints on them. But this one goes to the outside coil. This one goes to the outside coil. So this one is this one. This one goes to the inside coil. This one goes to the inside coil. So this one is that one, and this one is that one. So that works out pretty good. At least we have the same consistency. So now all I got to do is figure out, this is my outside coil, because you can see it connects up to the outside one. That one is number 6. And so over here I want to get a number 6. My little sticker. And this is the outside coil. And so over here I want to put the 6. Right there. Because it's going to go up in there that way and I can see from this side. So now I know that one is number 6. The only thing I got left is a number 5. Right there. And so I'm just going to take a number 5. And I'm going to stick a number 5 right there. And there we go. So that's my wiring orientation. Although it's in a different position for the two, all I got to do is match up off those little bitty markings that are on these ceramic things that tells me which one does what with the 2A, 1A, 2B, all of those. And then these two I had to check because they don't have any identification on them. So there we go. So we got it all identified. Those numbers will match up to the numbers on my wires over there. And we'll be ready to reinstall this thing. So let's get set back up on the stove and we'll put this guy back in, wire it up, and then we should be done with this swap out. Alright, so we're ready to reinstall our new element, and as you'll notice right here, when I took it out, see, I put little black marks right around the holes where those little feet go that I changed out. Really important because there's some that are real close to where those might be, and you might get it in the wrong spot and it's not going to center up correctly on the stove and you're going to be out of position. So make sure you mark those when you first pop those catches loose. Mark which ones it was, and then you'll be assured that you'll get it back in there in the right spot. So now, with all of that done, all we want to do is take our new element, and it goes with the face up, of course, and what we're going to do is slide it back in very carefully, and then we got to line our little footies up to those little holes right there. Then we're going to snap the foot in, and then we line this footy up to the other hole, see the mark right there, and we're going to snap that little footy in. I think I bent my tab, so my footy's not snapping anymore. Oh, wrong one. Yeah, so I bent my tab a little bit, so I need to get something and flex that back out because the little tab's not wanting to hold. So I'm just going to grab the end of it and bend it just a little bit to get that tab to catch right there. If that doesn't work, you can get something real sharp like a knife and you can slide it in there and correct that little tab that got damaged when I squeezed it. Pop that little catch out. See, now it'll stay in there, so I don't have to worry about that element popping loose because the little catches are holding it in its spot. We'll just stretch that one out just a little bit as well. There we go. So now we got the element back in the holder. Now all we got to do is push it back up and put the screw back in. Alright, so right here is our little screw, and then we want to line it back up. You'll see the marks up there on which one it was. And we put our little screw back in the hole. Alright, so since I marked everything, it's pretty simple. The little wires may not go in exactly the same spots, but we'll start right here at the bottom. So this was 6 here, and so that one goes to the element 6 right there. And if they're loose, you don't want them to be loose. So like that connector was a little different, so I'm going to have to squeeze that little connector down. You definitely don't want them to be loose when you're installing them. So let's squeeze that little guy back down because he might have got damaged a little bit when I popped him out of there. We want to make sure those are nice and tight because that'll just add resistance to everything. Now we put it on there. Alright, so because of the orientation difference, the number 4 wire was down here before. Well, it's got to get way up here to get to this position. and so it's not long enough. But if I lower my top down, I should be able to get a little more distance out of my wires here, and I'll be able to get that to connect up. So I'm going to lower the top down just a little bit. All right, so with the top lowered down a little bit, that gives me just enough length to get that number 4 identified wire over there. But if I didn't have enough length, I could always take it back out and clock this thing a little bit just to get me some distance. But I made it, and it's all cushy down here anyway, so there's no issues with that wire being right up under there like that. So we got everything wired up, everything installed. Now we just got to take all of our little stickers off, because they may melt underneath there, who knows. So I just got to get something sharp and cut those stickers off. Alright, so we got all of our stickers took off, and we're all in good shape on our wiring. So now all we got to do is just close it back down and put the 2 screws in the front, and we'll be in good shape. Alright, so there we go. Now we just got to plug it back in the back, and then we'll check the little element and the big element, make sure everybody's working, and we should be done with this DIY. Alright, so we're all plugged back in, so let's turn the little eye on and see. So this is the small element, so we're going to turn him on and see if he lights up. And there we go. We got our nice bright little small element working. And then we'll turn the large element on, because it's the one that went out. And we'll see if the large element comes on. So the small one comes on, as well as the large one. So there we go. In pretty good shape again for our stove here. And we are ready to cook something on the big guy again. Well, alrighty. Well, thanks for watching.